Before we begin, please tell us what city you're from. Subscribe, hit the like button, and stick around until the end. Here we go. The rifle butt slammed onto the wooden table with a crash. The glass in the framed photograph cracked. "You think we're kidding, old man?" snarled the lanky fellow with a deep scar slicing across his left cheek, his teeth rotten. Gregory stared at him in silence, his gnarled fingers interlocked. 3 strangers had burst into his cabin as he was brewing his evening tea. Resist? Useless. At 67, he wasn't going to put up much of a fight against 3 burly men. "Cat got your tongue?" The second thug, stocky and bald-headed, grabbed Gregory roughly by the shoulder and shook him. "What do you want?" the old man asked calmly, though inside everything clenched into a lump of ice. The third criminal, the youngest, shifted nervously by the door, constantly peering out the window. "Sam, there's someone out there," he blurted out suddenly. "Shut it, worm!" snapped the lanky one with the scar. "There's no one here but this old-timer." "I heard it. Something big," the young man insisted. "It's the wind," Gregory said slowly, "sweeping away tracks." The lanky one with the scar, named Sam, chuckled and leaned close to Gregory's face. "We need you, old man, as a guide. Lead us through the pass and you live. Don't, and, well, you know." Gregory knew what those words meant. Escaped convicts. They'd broken out of the max security prison in Pine Ridge, Montana. The radio had warned folks 2 weeks ago. He just hadn't thought they'd wander into such a remote area. Outside the window, a distinct sound reached them, a long, drawn-out howl that sent shivers down the thugs' spines. "What the hell was that?" the bald one snapped. Gregory smiled slowly. "That's my friend," he said quietly. "Silverback." At that very second, something heavy slammed against the door. It burst open, and in the doorway stood an enormous white wolf with a silver stripe down its spine. Its eyes glowed with a fierce yellow fire in the dim cabin light. Just 3 years earlier, the blizzard howled like a wounded beast. Gregory was making his way to his cabin on his old snowmobile, a trusty machine that had served him faithfully for 15 years. The snow blinded him, turning the familiar trail into a white, featureless desert. "Come on, old girl, just a little further." Gregory encouraged the machine, slapping the frozen handlebars. A former park ranger for the Elk Ridge Preserve, he now lived in seclusion in his cabin by the Yellowstone River. He and his wife, Natalie, had once dreamed of a quiet retirement in a city apartment, but fate had other plans. Natalie had passed away 7 years ago. Her heart had given out, and without her, the city apartment had become a cage from which Gregory fled back to the vast wilderness of the American Northwest. The snowmobile suddenly lurched and died. Gregory swore, dismounted, and sank knee-deep into the snow. "Just what I needed." He bent over the engine trying to diagnose the problem. Most likely, something had frozen. Not surprising, in a 20 below zero Fahrenheit cold snap. Gregory looked around. His cabin was still about half a mile away. He could walk it. He pulled his backpack with provisions from the snowmobile's storage compartment and started towards home. The wind whipped at his face, finding its way under his collar. The old man trudged, sinking heavily into the snow, and thought about how the years were finally catching up to him. He used to be able to hike through the wilderness all day without feeling tired. When he was about 100 yards from the cabin, Gregory heard a strange sound, a thin, barely audible yelp. He stopped, listened intently. The sound repeated. The ranger's ingrained habit made him deviate from the path. After a few yards, he saw a tiny white spot in the snow. Crouching down, Gregory carefully cleared away the snow. A small wolf pup stared up at him, so white that it was almost indistinguishable against the snow. Only a thin silver stripe down its back gave away its presence. The pup shivered with cold, but made no attempt to flee. "What's up, little one?" Gregory murmured softly. "Separated from your pack." The pup whimpered plaintively. Gregory carefully pulled off his mitten and touched the animal. It was icy cold. "You'll freeze to death out here," the old man sighed. "Well, I guess I'll have to take you in." He gently scooped up the pup and tucked it inside his jacket, beneath his warm coat. The animal didn't resist, simply snuggling into the human's warmth. "Don't worry, we'll make it," Gregory muttered, continuing his trek to the cabin. "I've been surviving out here for 30 years. I'll teach you." The cabin greeted him with silence and bone-chilling cold. Gregory quickly stoked the wood stove, put the kettle on. Then he pulled the quieted pup from his coat and placed him on an old blanket by the stove. "There you go, warm up," he said, noticing how the animal cautiously surveyed its new surroundings. "I'll get you something to eat in a minute." In the refrigerator, powered by a small generator, he found some cooked meat. Gregory chopped it finely and placed it on a saucer in front of the pup. The pup sniffed at it, but didn't touch the food. "Don't trust me?" The old man chuckled. "Good. You don't survive in the wilderness without caution." He moved to the table, sat down, and began unpacking the groceries he'd brought. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the pup cautiously creeping towards the saucer and starting to eat. "That's a good boy." Gregory nodded. "Get your strength up, and tomorrow we'll go look for your family." The pup ate and then curled up on the blanket again. Gregory brewed tea, dropping a few rose hips into his mug from the supplies he'd gathered in autumn. The taste reminded him of Natalie. She always added rose hips to her tea. "This is how we live, little one," he told the pup. "Just you and me. I'm living out my days here, and you're just starting yours." Gregory suddenly felt tears betrayingly well up in his eyes. It had been a long time since he'd cried. Not since Natalie's funeral, probably. But now it burst forth. Maybe from exhaustion. Maybe from the realization that at last there was a living creature beside him who needed him. The pup, as if sensing the man's state, got up and on unsteady legs walked over to Gregory. It gently nudged its nose into his hand. "What, comforting me?" The old man smiled through his tears. "Thank you, little one. You know what? I'll call you Silverback, for that stripe down your back. How does that sound?" The pup snorted softly, as if agreeing with the choice of name. In the morning, the blizzard subsided. Gregory, as usual, woke with the dawn, stoked the stove, and found that Silverback was already awake, carefully watching him from the blanket. "Good morning." The old man nodded to him. "Did you sleep well?" The pup stood up, stretched, and walked to the door. Gregory understood. "Want to go outside?" "Of course." He opened the door, and Silverback cautiously stepped onto the porch. The snow sparkled under the bright sun. The air was crystal clear and frigid. "Beautiful," Gregory sighed, stepping out after him. "These are the moments I live for." The pup took a few steps in the snow, then stopped and listened. Its ears twitched, catching the slightest sounds. Gregory knew a wolf pack must be nearby, or rather, the remnants of a pack. 3 years ago, poachers had been active in the preserve, They'd shot many wolves before they were finally caught. Now the population was slowly recovering. "Let's go find your relatives," Gregory said, putting on his skis. "If they're still alive." Silverback seemed to understand him. He ran ahead of Gregory, periodically stopping and looking back, as if checking if the man was following. "Wait up, little one," Gregory chuckled. "I'm not as fast as you." They delved deeper into the forest. Sunbeams filtered through the pine branches, creating intricate patterns on the snow. Gregory scanned the surroundings carefully, looking for wolf tracks. But apart from rabbit and fox prints, he found nothing. After 2 hours of searching, Gregory stopped for a rest. The pup, meanwhile, was sniffing around as if searching for a familiar scent. "No one here, Silverback," the old man sighed. "Looks like you really are alone." The pup suddenly froze and lifted its head. Its ears tensed. Gregory heard it too. In the distance, ravens cawed nervously, then branches cracked. Something large was moving through the forest. "Quiet," Gregory whispered, slowly drawing the rifle from his back. "Don't move." An enormous elk emerged from behind the trees. Its antlers rose proudly above its head, steam snorting from its nostrils. The animal moved heavily, limping on its front leg. "Wounded," Gregory whispered. "Poachers, most likely." The elk stopped, sensing the human in the pup. Its eyes were full of pain and fear. A second later, it bolted away, breaking branches and stirring up snow eddies. "Won't make it?" Gregory shook his head. "Strange that the wolves didn't finish it off." He turned to Silverback. "Well, little one, shall we go home? Looks like your family moved on from here." The pup stood for a moment longer, gazing in the direction the elk had fled, then obediently followed Gregory. Returning to the cabin, Gregory pondered the fate of the little pup. To release it into the forest now would be to condemn it to certain death. But keeping a wild animal in the cabin wasn't right either. "You know what, Silverback," he said as they approached the cabin. "You can stay with me for a while. Get strong. Then we'll see." The next few weeks, Gregory and Silverback spent together. The old man taught the pup to hunt. First mice around the cabin, then rabbits in the woods. The pup proved to be a clever student. He grew quickly, gaining strength, his silver stripe becoming more and more noticeable. "You'll be big and strong," Gregory would tell him when they sat by the stove in the evenings. "You'll become the pack leader." In response, the pup would lay his head on the old man's lap, and Gregory would stroke his thick fur. One day, returning from fishing, Gregory and Silverback saw wolf tracks near the cabin. The pup visibly perked up, sniffing the air. "They found you," Gregory sighed with a touch of sadness. "Well, that's good." That evening, as they sat in the cabin, a wolf howl echoed from outside. Silverback sprang up, ran to the door, and began scratching at it with his paws. "Want to go to your family?" Gregory asked. "I understand." He opened the door. The pup stopped on the threshold, glanced back at the old man as if hesitating. "Go on." Gregory waved his hand. "That's your family." Silverback looked at the man one last time, then resolutely leaped off the porch and ran toward the forest. Gregory stood in the doorway, watching the white figure recede until it dissolved into the twilight. "That's that," he said to himself, feeling a strange emptiness inside. Everything in its place. That night, Gregory couldn't sleep for a long time. He listened to the sounds of the forest, sometimes distinguishing a distant wolf howl. He thought about Silverback, about whether the pack would accept him, whether he would survive in the wild. At dawn, sleep finally overtook the old man. He awoke to the sound of claws scraping at the door. He opened his eyes, disbelieving his ears. He quickly got up, went to the door, and opened it. Silverback sat on the threshold. In his jaws he held a rabbit carcass. "You came back!" Gregory exhaled, feeling his eyes well up with moisture. "Did you bring me a gift?" The pup laid the rabbit at the man's feet and proudly lifted his head as if to say, "Look what you taught me." "Thank you." Gregory squatted down and stroked the pup. "Coming in?" Silverback entered the cabin but remained cautious, constantly glancing at the door. "I understand." Gregory nodded. "You have 2 families now." And so it continued. Silverback lived with the wolf pack, but regularly visited Gregory for 2 years now. Sometimes he stayed the night. Sometimes he just came, brought his catch, and disappeared back into the forest. "Frank, you should really ditch this wolf of yours," said Bill as he sat on the porch of Gregory's cabin. "People are talking." Bill, an old hunter and Gregory's only friend, had come to visit and brought news from the settlement. Now they sat, sipping honey tea and chatting. "Let them talk," Gregory waved off. "What's it to me? They say you're a sorcerer, that this wolf is your spirit guide." Bill lowered his voice, though there was no one around who could hear them. Gregory laughed. "Nonsense. He's just a wolf. I rescued him as a pup, that's all." "No, not just any wolf." Bill shook his head. "I've seen him myself. White as snow with a silver stripe. No other wolf has that." "Wonders of nature," Gregory shrugged. "And people are always ready to imagine things." "Maybe so." Bill didn't argue. "But Sheriff Miller is looking at you sideways. Says you shouldn't be feeding a wild animal. It's dangerous." Gregory chuckled again. "Tell you, Miller, that I'm not feeding Silverback. He's feeding me. You should see how much game he's brought me over the years." They both laughed. Then Bill grew serious. "Heard the news? 3 inmates escaped from the state penitentiary in Pine Ridge. Hardened criminals." Gregory frowned. "When?" "About 10 days ago. They're sweeping the whole area. They say one of them, Samson, was spotted by a local in your direction." "They've gone pretty far." "You bet. It's just a stone's throw from the Canadian border here. They probably want to get into Canada." Gregory looked thoughtfully toward the forest. "Through the pass, then?" "Exactly." Bill nodded. "And you're the only one who knows all the trails there, so be careful." "I'll manage somehow," Gregory replied calmly. "Not my first rodeo." Bill nodded understandingly. He knew Gregory had served in the military, been wounded. He also knew that after his wife's death, Gregory had become withdrawn and reclusive. He'd moved into the wilderness, built a cabin, and lived as a hermit. He only came to the settlement for necessities. "Well, I'm off," Bill said, finishing his tea. "Got to get home before dark." "Be careful," Gregory warned, "and thanks for stopping by." When Bill left, Gregory sat on the porch for a long time, watching the sunset. He thought about the escaped convicts. If they were indeed heading for the pass, they would inevitably stumble upon his cabin. "Let's hope, Silverback, that we don't have to meet these guests," Gregory said aloud, though the wolf wasn't nearby. But deep down, he knew a meeting was inevitable. Too few trails led through the pass, and winter was coming. Soon the pass would be snowed in, and no one would be able to cross it until spring. Silverback arrived the next day. He was now a large, mature wolf with powerful paws and piercing yellow eyes. Only the silver stripe along his spine revealed him to be the same small pup Gregory had once saved. "You made it." The old man smiled, stepping onto the porch. "I was getting worried." The wolf approached the man, allowing him to stroke his head. Gregory noticed a fresh scar on Silverback's side. "Fighting again?" The old man shook his head. "You're a wild one." Silverback snorted, as if denying the accusation. "All right, let's go in. I'll get you some tea." The wolf obediently entered the cabin and lay down in his favorite spot, by the stove, on the old blanket Gregory had placed specially for him. "Bill says people are afraid of you," the old man said, putting the kettle on the stove. "Says you're a spirit guide." Silverback turned his head and looked at Gregory as if asking, "And so?" "Nothing. Let them say what they want. We're good together, and that's all that matters." Gregory took a jar of honey and a piece of dried meat from the cupboard. He put the honey in his teacup and tossed the meat to the wolf. Silverback gratefully accepted the treat. "I've been thinking," Gregory continued, settling into his old armchair, "I should go to the settlement, buy some groceries, bullets. Winter's coming soon." Silverback lifted his head and looked at the man intently. "I know you don't like it when I leave," Gregory chuckled, "but what can I do? Even hermits need bullets." The wolf lowered his head onto his paws, showing his disappointment with his whole demeanor. "Don't sulk," the old man snorted. "I'll be back in a couple of days, and you keep an eye on the cabin here." Silverback made a soft sound, neither a growl nor a grunt. "And look after yourself, too," Gregory added, recalling his conversation with Bill. "Those escapees might be prowling around." The wolf seemed to understand his concern. He stood up, went to Gregory, and rested his head on his lap. The old man stroked his thick fur. "You're my only friend," he said softly. "Stay safe." Silverback licked the man's hand and then returned to his spot by the stove. In the morning, Gregory prepared for his journey. He put on a warm jacket and hat, checked if he had money in his wallet. Before leaving, he checked the cabin one last time, closed the stove damper, put away the food in the cupboard, locked the windows. "Well, I'm off," he told Silverback, who was sitting on the porch watching the preparations. "I'll be back in 2 days. Don't miss me too much." The wolf accompanied Gregory to the snowmobile, ran alongside it for a few hundred yards, then stopped and watched until the man disappeared from view. Gregory drove, thinking about how his life had changed with Silverback's arrival. The wolf seemed to fill the void left after Natalie's death. He gave new meaning to his existence. In the settlement, as usual, he had to listen to several stories about the ghost white wolf. "Gregory, is it true you tamed him?" the store clerk asked as he packed grains and canned goods into his backpack. "Not tamed, but befriended," the old man replied. "There's a difference." "But they say he protects you, guards your cabin." "People say a lot of things," Gregory shrugged. "Believe everything, and you'll go crazy." Meeting Sheriff Miller, Gregory heard the same thing as from Bill. "You, Gregory, be careful out there," Miller said, lighting a cigarette. "These escapees are dangerous men. Sampson was in for murder, Cole for armed robbery, and the third, Graham, though young, is also a dangerous character." "I'll manage," Gregory replied curtly. "If anything happens, shoot without warning." The sheriff lowered his voice. "I'm telling you this as the authority. By law, apprehend and turn over to law enforcement. But you and I both know what kind of law there is in the wilderness." Gregory nodded silently. He had long lived by his own laws. the laws of the wilderness, where order was established by strength and honesty, not by stamped papers. "Here's my number." Miller handed him a card. "Call if anything happens. Though communication out there, I'll get through if needed," Gregory assured him, tucking the card into his pocket. "Thanks for the warning." He spent the night in a small motel in the settlement, and in the morning, after loading his purchases onto the snowmobile, he set off on his return journey. Anxiety did not leave him. Something told him that trouble was close. The cabin looked untouched, no tracks in the snow except for animal prints. Gregory exhaled in relief and began unloading the snowmobile. "Silverback!" he called, carrying in the first bag of groceries. "I'm back." The wolf was nowhere to be seen. Usually he'd greet Gregory if he was nearby. The old man figured his friend must be hunting with his pack. After putting away the groceries, Gregory stoked the stove. It was cold in the cabin. Then he sat in his armchair, pulled out an old book, a volume of Jack London, his favorite author. He started reading, but the lines wouldn't form sentences. His thoughts kept returning to the conversation with the sheriff. If the escapees are really heading for the pass, they'll surely stumble upon the cabin, Gregory thought, and I'm alone, an old man, easy prey. He unconsciously touched the rifle hanging on the wall, a grizzly carbine, a reliable weapon. But shooting people, Gregory hadn't even liked killing in the military. And here, in his native wilderness, where he knew every tree, where he'd buried his wife. Evening brought a blizzard. The wind howled in the chimney, snow lashed at the windows. Gregory sat by the stove, listening to the sounds outside. Twice he thought he heard footsteps, but it was just the wind, throwing snow against the cabin walls. Around midnight there was a scratching at the door. Gregory flinched, grabbed his rifle, and aimed at the door. Then he heard a familiar snort and lowered his weapon in relief. "Silverback, is that you?" In response, the snorting sound came again. Gregory put down his rifle, went to the door, and opened it. Silverback stood on the threshold, covered in snow. "Come on in, friend," the old man smiled. "You must be frozen." The wolf shook himself off and entered the cabin. Gregory noticed the animal was agitated, ears flattened, eyes darting. "What's wrong?" he asked, crouching down beside the wolf. "What happened?" Silverback went to the window and whimpered softly, looking toward the forest. "Someone's out there?" Gregory guessed. The wolf nodded, as if understanding the question. "People?" Silverback whimpered softly again. "Got it," Gregory said, taking binoculars from the shelf. "Let's see." He extinguished the light in the cabin so he wouldn't be seen from the window and cautiously peered out. The blizzard had somewhat subsided. Through the falling snow he could make out the edge of the forest. Gregory stared for a long time until he noticed a faint light between the trees. A campfire was burning there. "I see," he whispered. "They've made camp." Silverback growled softly, confirming the guess. "They'll come tomorrow," Gregory said thoughtfully. "Or tonight. But more likely tomorrow. They won't travel in an unfamiliar forest during a blizzard." The wolf looked at him questioningly. "I'll manage," the old man said, stroking Silverback. "It's not my first time dealing with thugs." Gregory barely slept that night. He dozed, sitting in his armchair with the rifle on his knees. Silverback lay by the door, ears pricked. Several times he lifted his head and listened, but then settled calmly again. By morning, the blizzard had ended. The rising sun illuminated the sparkling snow, making it look like scattered jewels. At another time, Gregory would have admired this beauty, but now his mind was occupied with other thoughts. "I need to check the traps," he told Silverback, "and while I'm at it, see who's visiting us." The wolf stood up, ready to follow the man. "No, friend, you stay here." Gregory shook his head. "It's best if you're not seen yet." Silverback snorted disapprovingly, but obediently stayed in the cabin. Gregory put on his warm jacket and hat, took his rifle, and went out. The sun was blinding. He put on his dark glasses, which he always carried in winter, and moved towards the forest, where he had seen the campfire at night. The edge of the forest was about 300 yards away. Gregory walked carefully, trying not to make a sound. Reaching the trees, he noticed the remains of a campfire, blackened snow, charred branches. Tracks of 3 people were visible around it. "It's them," Gregory thought. Judging by the direction of the tracks, the escapees had moved towards the pass, bypassing his cabin, which meant they didn't know there was a dwelling in these parts. Gregory breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe they'd pass by. Maybe they'd go past and not return. But deep down, he knew it was unlikely. The pass in winter, a deadly place. Without a guide, without a map, without special equipment, they wouldn't make it. Sooner or later, they'd turn back, looking for help, or take it by force. He cautiously followed the tracks of the escaped convicts. The trail led to a small gorge where the path to the pass began. Gregory knew that after a kilometer, the path would climb steeply, becoming narrow and dangerous, and then it would open onto a snowfield that turned into a real trap in winter, deep crevices hidden under a thin layer of snow. After walking about 500 yards, Gregory stopped. It was dangerous to go further. The escapees might hear or see him. He turned back, deciding to return to the cabin and prepare for a possible encounter. As he approached the cabin, he saw Silverback. The wolf sat on the porch, staring intently toward the forest. "They went to the pass," Gregory said, stepping onto the porch, "but they probably won't get far." Silverback turned his head as if saying, "I warned you." Yes, you were right." The old man chuckled. "Let's go inside. We need to prepare." The day passed in anxious anticipation. Gregory cleaned his rifle, prepared ammunition. Then he checked the locks on the windows and door. Although the cabin looked flimsy from the outside, it was well built. Thick logs, sturdy frames. Silverback was restless all day. He would go outside and stare toward the forest for a long time, then return and pace nervously around the room. "I'm nervous too," Gregory told him, "but we're used to difficulties, aren't we?" By evening, Gregory had prepared dinner, a simple but hearty stew of canned goods and grains. He ate, gave Silverback a portion, then he sat by the stove with his rifle and waited. They arrived after dark. First, voices were heard. They weren't particularly trying to hide. Then there was a knock on the door. "Hey, owner, open up!" A coarse male voice shouted. Gregory exchanged glances with Silverback. The wolf growled, but the old man gestured for him to be silent. "Who's there?" Gregory asked, approaching the door. "Lost travelers," the same voice replied. "Open up, old man, we're freezing." Gregory knew he couldn't refuse. In the wilderness, it wasn't customary to refuse shelter, even to strangers, and refusal would only anger the escaped criminals. "Just a moment," he said, unlatching the bolt. "Come in." The door opened, and 3 men entered the cabin. Exactly the ones the sheriff had mentioned, one tall with a scar across his cheek, Samson. The second, burly, bald, with tattoos on his neck, Cole. The third, a very young man, thin and nervous, Graham, whom they called Worm. "It's warm in here, old man," Samson chuckled, surveying the room. "Cozy." "Have a seat," Gregory said calmly, pointing to the bench by the table. "Tea? Tea?" Cole laughed. "Hear that, Sam? The old man's offering tea. Nothing stronger on offer?" "No," Gregory cut him off. "I don't keep any." "Pity," Samson drawled, approaching the table. Noticing a photograph of a smiling woman on the wall, he asked, "Wife?" "She was," Gregory replied curtly. "Right," Samson nodded. "And what do you do out here? Live like a hermit?" "I live." "Alone?" "As you see." Silverback had been lying by the stove the whole time, watching the newcomers. Graham was the first to notice the wolf. "Bloody hell, what a beast!" he exclaimed, backing towards the door. "Is that a wolf?" "A wolf," Gregory confirmed. "Don't be afraid, he's peaceful." "You live with a wolf?" Cole sounded surprised. "Well, I'll be, old man." Samson looked intently at Silverback, then at Gregory. "All right, to business. We need a guide through the pass. They say you're the only one who knows a safe trail." "Who says?" Gregory asked, though he already knew the answer. "We heard it in the settlement. We need to get into Canada. Urgent." "Why the rush?" Gregory asked calmly, though he perfectly understood the reason for their haste. "None of your business," Cole growled. "Hold on, Baldy." Samson stopped him. "The old man should know who he's dealing with." He turned to Gregory. "We escaped from prison. They're looking for us. They catch us. They'll put us back. And I'm not going back there. I'd rather die." "I don't help escaped criminals," Gregory said firmly. Samson stepped forward menacingly. "And I'm not asking, old man. I'm telling you, you'll lead us through the pass whether you want to or not." And just then the rifle butt slammed onto the wooden table with a crash. The glass in the framed photograph cracked. "You think we're kidding, old man?" snarled the lanky fellow with the scar. Gregory looked at him in silence, his gnarled fingers interlocked. An inner voice told him to stay calm. There was no way out. He couldn't fight 3 burly men. "Cat got your tongue?" The second thug, stocky and bald-headed, grabbed Gregory roughly by the shoulder and shook him. "What do you want?" the old man asked calmly, though inside everything clenched into a lump of ice. Graham, the youngest, shifted nervously by the door, constantly peering out the window. "Sam, there's someone out there," he blurted out suddenly. "Shut it, Worm," Samson snapped. "There's no one here but this old-timer." "I heard it. Something big," the young man insisted. "It's the wind," Gregory said slowly, "sweeping away tracks." Silverback had been lying by the stove all this time, unmoving, but Gregory saw how tense his muscles were, how his yellow eyes burned. One sign, and the wolf would lunge at the aggressors. But the old man understood that it would be a deadly leap. Even such a large animal couldn't handle 3 armed men. "So, old man," Samson leaned into Gregory's face, "tomorrow at dawn you'll lead us over the pass. Show us the safe trail. Get us to the Canadian side. And then you'll be free as a bird." "And if I refuse?" Gregory asked, already knowing the answer. "Then we'll kill you," Cole said simply. "And your beast, too. And then we'll go over the pass ourselves. Maybe we won't make it, but you certainly won't see it." Gregory knew he had no choice. He had to agree, buy time, and then he'd see. "All right," he said. "I'll lead you, but on one condition." "What other conditions?" Samson frowned. "You don't touch the wolf. Samson exchanged glances with Cole, then shrugged. Fine, we don't need your beast. But if he tries to attack, he won't try, Gregory assured him. He understands words. Oh, yeah? Cole sneered. Reads minds, too? He doesn't read minds, but he understands the situation. Silverback, as if confirming his master's words, got up and walked over to Gregory. He sat down beside him, looking at the thugs. Look at that. He really does understand, Graham said, surprised. Like a dog. He's not a dog, Gregory shook his head. He's a wolf, and my friend. What a touching story, Samson said sarcastically. Old man and wolf, best friends. All right, enough chatter. We need to sleep before tomorrow's crossing. Where can we lie down here? Gregory pointed to the bunk in the corner. 2 of you can fit there. The 3rd can sleep on the floor by the stove. And you? Cole asked. I'll sit in the armchair. You'll sit, Samson nodded. Just no funny business. I'm a light sleeper, and we'll take your rifle, so we're not tempted. He took the carbine from the wall and placed it beside him on the bunk. Worm, you're on first watch, he told the young man. Wake Baldy in 3 hours. Got it, Sam, the young man nodded. Gregory sat in the armchair, and Silverback lay at his feet. The old man gently stroked the wolf's head, and the wolf looked at the man with understanding eyes. Wait, my friend, Gregory mentally told him. It's not time yet. The night dragged on slowly. Samson and Cole slept on the bunk, snoring loudly. Graham sat by the window, nervously glancing at his sleeping companions, then at Gregory and the wolf, then into the darkness outside the window. How long have you lived with the wolf? He suddenly asked in a whisper. 3 years, Gregory replied just as quietly. And you're not scared? Why should I be scared? People are scarier. Graham was silent for a moment, then asked, How did you tame him? I didn't tame him. The old man shook his head. Friendship isn't tamed, it's earned. I wanted a dog when I was in foster care, Graham admitted unexpectedly, but they wouldn't let me. Said who would take care of it. Gregory looked intently at the young man. He was just a kid, really, and it seemed not as lost as his companions. What were you in for? He asked. Burglary, Graham replied reluctantly. But I didn't want to. Sam talked me into it, said it would be easy money. And did you make much? Got 5 years, the young man chuckled bitterly. Served 2. Now they'll add more for the escape. Graham nervously glanced at the sleeping men. I had no choice. They said either with them or I was dead. Sam has everything sewn up in there. He's a big shot. Gregory nodded understandingly. Silverback lifted his head and also looked at the young man as if evaluating him. How old are you? The old man asked. 22. You have your whole life ahead of you. Why are you with them? They'll catch you in Canada anyway. These 2 will abandon you at the first opportunity. Graham lowered his head. I know, but there was no choice, and there isn't one now. Too late. It's never too late to make the right choice, Gregory said softly. I made my share of mistakes at your age, too. Spent the rest of my life trying to fix them. At that moment, Cole stirred, muttering something in his sleep. Graham nervously fell silent and turned to the window. The conversation was over. By morning, Gregory finally dozed off. He woke up to a rough shove. Samson was shaking his shoulder. Up and at 'em, old man. Time's a-wasting, Silverback growled, but Gregory reassuringly placed his hand on his head. Quiet, friend. It's all right. After a quick breakfast, canned goods and tea, they got ready to leave. Samson carried Gregory's rifle himself, not trusting the owner. Cole watched to make sure the old man didn't do anything suspicious. Graham simply followed, lost in his thoughts. Silverback came out with them and moved alongside Gregory. "Your beast coming with us?" Samson frowned. "He goes where he pleases," the old man replied calmly. "I'm not his owner." "Just you watch it," the thug warned. "If he pulls anything—" Gregory said nothing. He led the group through the snow-covered forest to the start of the trail to the pass. Silverback ran alongside, sometimes disappearing into the thicket, but always returning. The trail gradually climbed upwards. The trees became sparser. The wind intensified. Gregory chose the path carefully, avoiding dangerous spots. Samson and Cole watched his every move, their weapons at the ready. By noon, they reached the first difficult section, a narrow ledge overhanging a cliff. The path here was barely visible under the snow, only about 1.5 feet wide. "You need to go single file here," Gregory warned, "and carefully. There's ice under the snow." "You first, old man," Samson commanded. "We're right behind you." Gregory nodded and stepped onto the ledge. Slowly, carefully placing each step, he moved forward. Samson followed him, then Cole, and Graham brought up the rear. Silverback outran them all, easily scrambling across the ledge, and waited on the other side. "Wish we had paws like that," Cole muttered, looking enviously at the wolf. When they had safely passed the dangerous section, Samson asked, "How much further to the pass?" "About 3 hours' walk," Gregory replied, "if the weather doesn't get worse." But the weather, as if hearing his words, began to deteriorate. Heavy clouds gathered from the north, the wind intensified, bringing with it stinging snowflakes. "Damn it, a blizzard is all we need now," Cole cursed. "We need to hurry," Gregory said. "Otherwise, we'll get stuck on the pass, and that's certain death." They quickened their pace. The trail grew steeper. Their breathing became ragged, their feet sinking into the snow. Silverback darted around as if showing the way. An hour later, a full-blown blizzard began. Visibility dropped to a few yards. Snow stung their eyes. The wind knocked them off their feet. "Stop!" Gregory shouted. "We can't go any further. We'll wait it out in shelter." "What in hell's shelter?" Samson roared. "There's nothing but snow and rocks here." "There's a crevice in the cliff ahead, something like a cave. I know this place." Samson looked at the old man skeptically, but there was no choice. They followed Gregory, who confidently led the way, navigating by signs known only to him. Soon a dark gap in the rock face indeed appeared ahead, wide enough for a person to enter. "In there!" Gregory shouted over the howling wind. One by one they scrambled inside. The crevice proved to be deeper than it looked from the outside, a proper small cave where they could take refuge from the bad weather. "How did you find it in such a blizzard?" Cole asked, incredulous. "I know every path here," Gregory simply replied. "Been coming here for 30 years." Silverback entered last, shook off the snow, and lay down by the entrance like a sentinel. "Start a fire," Gregory said. "It'll get cold." "With what?" Graham asked, looking around. "There's no firewood here, nothing?" "In my backpack I have a spirit burner and solid fuel. And deeper inside the cave there should be some leftover firewood. I always leave a supply for such occasions." Cole snorted skeptically but went to check. Soon he returned with an armful of dry branches. "Well, you're well prepared, old man." "In the wilderness, without provisions, it's death," Gregory shrugged. They built a small fire in the center of the cave. The flames illuminated the stone walls and the weary faces of the travelers. The blizzard outside intensified, howling and throwing snow into the narrow entrance of the cave. "How long will it keep blowing like this?" Samson asked, glancing at the dark sky beyond their shelter. "It should die down by nightfall," Gregory replied, "but it's better to go in the morning. The pass is dangerous at night even in good weather." "Then we're staying here," Samson decided. "No risks." They sat in silence, warming their hands by the fire. Samson never took his eyes off Gregory, his rifle at the ready. Cole dozed, leaning against the wall. Graham nervously glanced at his companions, then at the wolf by the entrance. "Why doesn't he come closer to the fire?" the young man whispered. "It's cold." "He's on guard," Gregory replied just as quietly. "Wolves can endure the cold." "Smart," Graham nodded respectfully. "Smarter than many people," the old man agreed. "Tell me how you found him," the young man asked. "I'm curious." Gregory paused, gazing at the fire, then began to narrate, softly, almost a whisper. 3 years ago, there was a blizzard just like this. I was returning to my cabin on my snowmobile. Suddenly, I saw something white struggling in the snow. I looked closer. A wolf pup, just tiny, white as snow, with only a silver stripe down its back, shivering all over, freezing. His mother, probably killed by hunters, or he got separated from the pack himself. I took him under my coat, brought him home. I thought I'd warm him up, then release him. But it turned out like this." "He didn't leave on his own?" Graham asked, surprised. "He did leave, lived with a pack. But he always came back, visited, brought prey, shared it. Like a fairy tale." The young man shook his head. "Life is sometimes stranger than fairy tales," Gregory chuckled. Silverback, as if he heard them talking about him, turned his head and looked at the men by the fire. His eyes reflected the flames. It seemed as if they were burning from within. "Creepy gaze," Graham shivered. "A normal wolf's," Gregory countered. "People have just forgotten how to read such gazes. A wolf always looks straight, without pretense, sees right through you." They fell silent. The fire crackled, the blizzard howled, and the wolf watched the men with an unwavering gaze. By morning, the blizzard had indeed died down. The sky had cleared, and the sunrise painted the snowy peaks pink. The cold air stung their lungs. "Get up!" Gregory woke everyone. "We need to go while the weather's good." They quickly had breakfast with their remaining food, extinguished the fire, and left the cave. Silverback, who had spent the entire night at the entrance, now ran ahead, occasionally stopping and looking back at the group. "Looks like your beast knows the way," Samson observed. "He knows the way everywhere," Gregory replied. "This is his territory." The trail grew steeper and narrower. Soon the trees completely vanished, and a wide snowfield surrounded by rocks opened before them, the pass itself. "Now comes the most dangerous part," Gregory warned. "There are cracks under the snow. Follow me precisely, step in step." He slowly moved forward, cautiously testing each step. Silverback ran alongside, sometimes seeming to indicate dangerous spots. There he would stop and growl softly. "Is your wolf helping us, or what?" Cole asked, surprised. "He senses danger," Gregory nodded. "His nose is better than any human's." Ahead, a narrow path between the rocks appeared, the exit from the pass. Gregory breathed a sigh of relief. Only a little further now. Suddenly, Silverback froze and growled low, staring at the rocks to the right. Gregory followed his gaze and saw fresh snow on the ledge, a recent small rockfall. "Stop!" he commanded. "Don't move!" "What's wrong?" Samson asked nervously. "It's an avalanche-prone area. No noise here. Speak in whispers and go slowly." "How much further to the exit from the pass?" Cole asked quietly. 200 yards, no more." "Then hurry up, old man. Time's running out." They slowly moved on. Gregory watched the rocks carefully. Silverback walked beside him, ears pricked. Samson clutched his rifle tightly, his eyes fixed on the old man's back. Suddenly, a cracking sound came from somewhere above. Everyone froze. A crack ran across the rock face, and several stones tumbled down. "Run to the trail," Gregory commanded. "An avalanche is coming down now." They scrambled to run. From behind, a deafening roar erupted. A layer of snow broke off the cliff and rushed downwards, carrying with it ever-new masses of snow. "Faster!" Gregory shouted, urging on the lagging Graham. They had almost reached the safe trail when the edge of the avalanche caught up with them. Graham was knocked off his feet and dragged backward. Gregory turned, saw the young man desperately clinging to the snow, trying to stop himself. "Hold on!" the old man shouted and rushed towards him. But Samson grabbed him by his jacket. "Where are you going? You can't help him now. Run!" "Let go!" Gregory broke free and ran towards Graham. Silverback was ahead of him. With powerful leaps, the wolf reached the young man, gripped his jacket in his teeth, and pulled him sideways, trying to drag him out of the snowflow. Gregory ran up, grabbed Graham's hand. Together with the wolf, they pulled the young man out of the snowy trap and dragged him towards the rocks, where Samson and Cole were already waiting. They practically flew the last few yards, collapsing into safety behind a rock outcrop, while the main mass of the avalanche swept past, filling the valley with snow. "Are you all right?" Gregory asked, breathing heavily. Graham couldn't speak, only nodded, looking at the old man and the wolf with wide eyes. "Thank you," he finally managed to croak. You saved me." "Consider yourself lucky," Samson grumbled. "All right, we rested. Now move. How much further?" "About 2 hours to the border," Gregory replied, brushing snow from his clothes. "But there are rangers there. We'll have to go around." "We'll take care of that ourselves," Samson snapped. "You get us to the border, and then you're free." Gregory nodded silently and led them on. The trail descended, winding between the rocks. It was warmer here. The snow lay in a less dense layer. Soon the first trees appeared. The forest was beginning. "Are we in Canada yet?" Cole asked, looking around. "Not yet." Gregory shook his head. "The border's further, but we've descended from the pass. The hardest part is behind us." They walked through the forest for another hour or so. Silverback ran ahead, occasionally stopping and listening. In one spot, he suddenly froze, lifted his head, and whined softly. "What's wrong with him?" Samson tensed. "He senses something," Gregory replied. "People, most likely." "A patrol?" Cole asked, alarmed. "Possibly. We need to be more careful." They moved slower, trying not to make noise. Silverback led them on a detour, choosing the densest thickets. After some time, they emerged into a small clearing with a view of the border strip, a cleared space with fences. "Here's the border," Gregory said. "The rest is up to you." Samson carefully scanned the area with binoculars. "I see a patrol, 2 of them, walking back and forth." "Let's wait until dark," Cole suggested. "It'll be easier to slip through in the dark." "Agreed." Samson nodded and turned to Gregory. "Well, old man, thanks for the tour. You're free." Gregory looked at him warily. "I can go?" "Of course," Samson sneered. "Just whistle, and the Border Patrol will arrest you right away." I won't say anything to anyone," the old man replied calmly. "My life is dear to me." "That's right." Samson handed him the rifle. "Here, I'm an honest man. I said I'd let you go, so I will." Graham unexpectedly stepped up to Gregory. "Thank you for everything, and to your wolf, too." He held out his hand, and the old man, after a slight hesitation, shook it. "Good luck, son," he said softly, "and think about what we talked about. It's never too late to change your life." Graham lowered his eyes and nodded. Gregory called Silverback, and the two of them started back down the trail. The old man felt the escapee's gazes on his back, but didn't turn around. Only when they were deep in the forest did he stop and listen. Silverback also froze, ears pricked. Not a sound came from the forest. "Well, friend, it's time to go home," Gregory said. "It's been a long day." The wolf snorted softly and moved forward, showing the way. They walked quickly, not stopping for rest. Gregory wanted to cross the pass and descend to his side before dark. They crossed the pass without incident. The weather was clear, visibility excellent. Gregory kept to the trail, making sure not to disturb the snowy slopes. By evening, they descended into the valley and stopped for the night in the same cave where they had spent the night with the escapees. Gregory built a fire, warmed himself, and ate a little. Silverback refused food, apparently intending to hunt at night. "Are you leaving?" the old man asked, noticing the wolf pacing restlessly at the cave entrance. Silverback looked at the man and whimpered softly. "I understand. The pack is waiting." Gregory nodded. "Go. I'll be fine." The wolf looked at the old man one more time, then darted out of the cave and disappeared into the twilight. Gregory sat by the fire, gazing at the flames. He thought about the day that had passed, about Graham, about what could have happened if Silverback hadn't sensed the danger. Thoughts flowed slowly, forming intricate patterns like the flames in the fire. Suddenly, a rustle came from outside. Gregory tensed, grabbed his rifle. A shadow appeared in the opening, too large for Silverback. "Who's there?" the old man called out, aiming his rifle at the entrance. "Don't shoot, old man. It's me," a familiar voice answered, and Graham entered the cave. "You?" Gregory was surprised. What happened? The young man approached the fire, knelt down. His face was pale, his lips trembling. They killed the rangers," he stammered. "Slaughtered them like cattle. I didn't want to be a part of it." "And you ran?" "Yes. When they went to check the pockets of the dead, I just turned and ran. Sam shot after me, but he missed." Graham buried his face in his hands. "I can't do this any more. I don't want to be like them." Gregory watched the young man in silence, trying to discern if he was telling the truth. Graham looked up at him. "I'll surrender to the authorities. Let them judge me. I'll serve my time, but I'm done running." "Why did you come back here?" Gregory asked. "I don't know. Maybe because you're the only one who talked to me like a human being, not like a worm. And also, you and your wolf saved me today. I won't forget that." Gregory nodded thoughtfully. "Well, make yourself comfortable by the fire. In the morning, we'll decide what to do next." Graham looked gratefully at the old man and moved closer to the fire. "Where's your wolf?" he asked, looking around. "He went to his pack," Gregory replied. "He sometimes leaves for a few days." "Amazing animal." The young man shook his head. "Never seen anything like it." "He's special," the old man agreed. "But all wolves are special. People just rarely notice it." They were silent for a while, gazing at the fire. Then Graham asked, "What do you think will happen to me when I go back and turn myself in?" "They'll add to your sentence," Gregory answered honestly, "for the escape. But if you tell them about the Rangers' murders, you might get some leniency for cooperating, and most importantly, you can start over with a clean slate, without running, without fear." "Sounds good," the young man smiled weakly. "At least not constantly looking over my shoulder." The next morning they started their journey back. Gregory led the way, showing the path. Graham followed him. They barely spoke, each lost in his own thoughts. By the evening of the second day of their journey, they approached Gregory's cabin. Suddenly, Silverback emerged from the forest. He looked warily at Graham, then shifted his gaze to the old man. "It's all right, friend," Gregory reassured him. "He's with us." The wolf snorted and walked alongside, keeping his eyes on the young man. "He remembers me," Graham observed, "and he doesn't trust me." "Wolves don't forget," Gregory nodded, "and they don't forgive betrayal, but they remember kindness just as much." When they reached the cabin, they noticed fresh tracks in the snow. Gregory tensed. "Someone's been here." Silverback growled, looking at the door. It was ajar, though Gregory distinctly remembered locking it. "Careful," he warned Graham, taking out his rifle. They slowly approached the door. Silverback walked ahead, his head low, teeth bared. Gregory pushed the door open with his rifle and peered inside. The cabin was a complete mess. Overturned furniture, scattered belongings. And in the midst of this chaos sat Samson and Cole. "Well, well, the owner's arrived," Samson sneered, raising his pistol, "and brought a traitor with him. Very convenient." Gregory instinctively stepped forward, shielding Graham. Silverback growled, ready to lunge at their opponents. "How did you get here?" the old man asked, not lowering his rifle. "After your friend ran, we decided it was too dangerous to cross the border," Samson explained. "They've probably raised an alarm there by now, so we came back. We knew your cabin was empty." "And decided to search it?" Gregory glanced around the ransacked dwelling. "Looking for money, weapons," Cole shrugged. "We need everything now. We have to change our plans." "But then you turn up so conveniently," Samson continued, "and our runaway with you. Very fortunate." "What did you do to the Rangers?" Gregory asked, though he already knew the answer. "What needed to be done?" Samson replied coldly. "They were in our way." He stood up and stepped towards Gregory. "Now drop the rifle, or I'll shoot the boy first, then you, then your precious wolf." Gregory saw that Samson wasn't bluffing. There was an emptiness in his eyes, the kind that only belongs to people for whom another's life means nothing. "All right," the old man said, slowly lowering his rifle. "Just don't shoot the boy. He's not to blame for anything." "Oh, really?" Cole scoffed. "I think Worm betrayed us, and we don't like traitors." Gregory placed the rifle on the floor. Silverback continued to growl, his eyes fixed on the thugs. "Control your beast," Samson ordered. "Otherwise, I'll shoot him right now." "Silverback, quiet," Gregory commanded. "It's all right." The wolf reluctantly stopped growling but remained tense, ready to spring. "What are you going to do?" the old man asked. "Use you as a guide again," Samson replied, "only this time in the other direction. We need to get to the city, get lost there, and then maybe try to cross the border elsewhere." "I'll lead you," Gregory nodded, "but let the boy go." "No," Samson cut him off. "He knows too much. He's coming with us." Graham stood pale but calm. He looked at Gregory. Don't worry about me. It's my own fault for getting mixed up with them." "Enough talking," Cole impatiently interrupted. "Sam, what next?" "We'll spend the night here," Samson decided, "and move out in the morning. Does the old man know a shortcut to the settlement?" "I do," Gregory confirmed. "A day's journey, if the weather is good." "Excellent. Now everyone sit down and don't move. Baldy, tie them up." Cole took a rope from his pocket and began tying Graham's hands. Then he approached Gregory. "Hands behind your back, old man." The old man obeyed. Silverback tensed, but Gregory gave him a stern look. "Quiet! No!" The wolf retreated, but his eyes never left Cole, who roughly tightened the rope around the old man's wrists. "And your beast better be locked up somewhere," Samson said, looking warily at Silverback. "I don't like the way he's looking." "He's not going anywhere," Gregory shook his head. "He'll stay with me." "Then tie him up, or I'll shoot him right now." Gregory looked at the wolf. "Silverback, lie down, and don't move." The wolf seemed to understand. He slowly lay down on the floor at his master's feet and rested his head on his paws, his eyes never leaving the thugs. "Smart, damn him," Cole muttered. "Like a human." "He's smarter than many people," Gregory said softly, "and kinder." The evening passed in tense silence. Samson and Cole took turns standing guard, keeping the prisoners at gunpoint. Graham dozed, sitting on the floor leaning against the wall. Gregory did not sleep, thinking about how to get out of this situation. Silverback lay motionless, like a statue, only occasionally blinking and shifting his gaze from one thug to another. Around midnight, Cole, who was on guard at that moment, started to nod off. Samson was already asleep on the bunk, his pistol lying beside him. Gregory quietly whispered to Silverback, "Friend, we need help." The wolf raised his head, looking at his master. "Your pack," Gregory whispered. "Call them." Silverback seemed to understand. He slowly rose, stretched, as if simply limbering up. Cole startled awake. "Hey, beast, lie down." The wolf looked at the thug, then at Gregory. The old man gave an almost imperceptible nod. At that very second, Silverback darted towards the door, slamming into it with his paws, throwing it wide open, and sprang outside. "God damn it!" Cole roared, leaping up. "Sam, the wolf escaped." Samson woke up, grabbed his pistol. Where did he go? "Bolted into the woods." "To hell with him," Samson decided. "Close the door. The main thing is these two are here." Cole slammed the door shut and returned to the prisoners. "Your beast abandoned you, old man. Ran away with his tail between his legs." Gregory said nothing, only smiled faintly. Graham looked at the old man questioningly, but Gregory gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Be quiet." About an hour passed. The thugs calmed down, deciding that the wolf wouldn't return. Cole began to doze again. Samson sat by the window, staring into the darkness. Suddenly, a long wolf howl echoed from outside. One, then a second, a third. Many voices merged into an eerie, bone-chilling symphony. "What the hell?" Samson flinched, peering out the window. In the moonlight, he saw dozens of glowing eyes. Wolves surrounded the cabin. In front stood Silverback, his white fur gleaming silver in the moonbeams. "Baldy, to the window!" Samson commanded. "There are wolves out there, a whole pack." Cole ran to the window and recoiled. "Holy hell, there are dozens of them." "Silverback brought his pack," Gregory said calmly. "I told you he was no ordinary wolf." "Shut up, old man," Samson snapped, frantically trying to figure out what to do. "They're just animals. They'll be scared by gunshots." He aimed and fired through the window. In response, a chorus of howls erupted, but the wolves didn't retreat. On the contrary, they began to approach the cabin. "What the hell?" Cole cried, frightened. "Why aren't they scared?" "Because Silverback is their leader," Gregory replied, "and leaders don't retreat." The wolves surrounded the cabin in a tight ring. Several large individuals began scratching at the door and windows. Samson fired again, hitting one wolf, but the others only grew more enraged. "We're finished," Graham whispered, eyes wide as he stared out the window. "They won't let us out." "Untie us," Gregory said to Samson. "I can call them off." "You're lying." Samson aimed his pistol at the old man. "You set them on us." "No." Gregory shook his head. "Silverback decided this. He's protecting me. But I can stop them. For now." Samson and Cole exchanged glances. The door began to crack under the pressure of the wolf bodies. "Untie him," Samson decided. "But if this is a trick—" Cole quickly cut the ropes on Gregory's hands. The old man rubbed his numb wrists, went to the door, and opened it. Silverback stood on the porch, surrounded by other wolves. His yellow eyes glowed in the darkness. "Silverback," Gregory said quietly, "thank you, friend, but now you need to leave. These men are dangerous." The wolf didn't move, continuing to look at the man. Behind him, the other wolves shifted restlessly on their paws, ready to lunge forward at their leader's first sign. "Call him off, old man," Samson shouted, pressing the pistol against the old man's back. "Or I'll shoot you right now," Silverback growled, hearing the threat. The other wolves echoed his growl, the air filled with a menacing chorus. "They understand everything," Gregory said without turning around, "and they won't leave until I'm safe." "Then you're coming with us," Samson decided. "You'll be our shield. Baldy, grab the boy. We're leaving slowly." Cole pulled Graham from the floor and pushed him toward the door. Samson pressed his pistol into Gregory's back. "No tricks, old man. One wrong move, and you're a dead man." They stepped out onto the porch. The wolves parted, forming a narrow corridor. At its end stood Gregory's snowmobile. "To the vehicle," Samson commanded. "The old man drives, I'm next to him. You two, in the back." They slowly moved toward the snowmobile. The wolves walked parallel, never falling behind. Silverback followed right behind Gregory, his eyes fixed on the pistol in Samson's hand. As they reached the snowmobile, Cole suddenly pushed Graham to the ground, jumped into the driver's seat himself, and bellowed, "Sam, hurry up! I'm starting it!" Samson was distracted for a second, and that was enough. Silverback sprang like lightning, sinking his teeth into the hand holding the pistol. A shot rang out, the bullet flying into the air. Gregory dove aside, pulling Graham out of the line of fire. "Ah, ah, ah!" Samson screamed, trying to shake off the wolf. "Shoot him, Baldy! Shoot him!" But Cole had already started the snowmobile and, without waiting for his comrade, sped away, trying to break through the ring of wolves. Silverback didn't let go of Samson's hand, clamping his jaws tighter. The thug continued to scream, trying to hit the wolf with his free hand. At that moment, the other wolves lunged forward. Gregory dragged Graham behind the snowmobile, shielding him from the chaos unfolding before them. Dozens of wolves attacked Samson, pulling him down into the snow. Cole tried to break through on the snowmobile, but the wolves threw themselves under the tracks, causing the machine to bog down. Several large individuals jumped onto the snowmobile, attacking Cole. He lost control, and the machine crashed into a tree. The screams soon died down. The wolves moved away from the bodies, gathering around Silverback. He stood, bloody but proud, and looked at Gregory. "It's over now," the old man said quietly, getting up and helping Graham to his feet. "They won't harm anyone else." The young man stared at the scene with a mix of horror and awe. They understood what they were doing, like on command. "Silverback is their leader," Gregory simply replied, "and a leader protects his pack and his friends." He walked over to Silverback, knelt beside him. "Thank you, friend. You saved us." The wolf licked the man's hand and snorted softly, as if to say, "It was nothing." Gregory sat on the porch of his cabin, watching the sunset. A year had passed since those events. The spring evening was warm. The snow had almost melted, revealing patches of the first greenery. The old man stroked a she-wolf with a gray patch on her side, one of Silverback's pack. She had come to visit him, as did other wolves from time to time. After that night, much had changed. Gregory and Graham buried the thugs' bodies deep in the forest. Then they went to the settlement, where they told Sheriff Miller everything. Miller listened carefully to the story of the escaped convicts, of how they had forced Gregory to lead them through the pass, of how they had killed the rangers, and of how they had failed to cope with the wild and perished attempting to cross the pass. Graham voluntarily surrendered to the authorities. Thanks to his testimony against his deceased accomplices and his remorse, he received a minimal additional sentence for the escape. Gregory promised to await his release. "I'll give you work," he had told the young man then. "It's hard to manage the homestead alone." And the homestead truly had grown. Gregory acquired some goats, built a new shed. He had decided he'd had enough of living as a hermit. Now he went to the settlement every month, socialized with people. He even started inviting guests, Bill, Miller, other acquaintances, and they all told stories of the ghost white wolf that protected the old ranger, of the wolf with the silver stripe down his spine, to whom an entire pack submitted, of how this wolf had saved Gregory and the young man from the escaped convicts, punishing the murderers. Silverback had become a local legend. He was feared, but also respected. Poachers avoided the territory where his pack lived, and those who dared to break the unwritten law of the wilderness often found torn traps and destroyed snares. Silverback still visited Gregory, sometimes staying for several days, sometimes just dropping by for a minute, as if checking if everything was all right. Now, the she-wolf with the gray patch often came with him, his mate, and last year pups had appeared, white like Silverback, but without the silver stripe. Such a unique feature, apparently, belonged only to him. Gregory gazed at the sunset and thought about how wonderfully life was structured. People who considered themselves the pinnacle of creation often proved to be worse than animals, and a wild beast whom everyone feared was capable of such loyalty and understanding that one didn't always find in a human. The she-wolf at his feet raised her head and tensed. A familiar silhouette appeared from the forest. Silverback. He walked slowly, majestically, as befitted a leader. Behind him followed 3 grown pups, now almost adult wolves. "Brought the youngsters to meet me?" Gregory smiled. "Come on, don't be shy." The young wolves cautiously approached, sniffing the man's hand. Silverback watched them, as if evaluating. "You have good children," the old man said. "Smart. They take after you?" The wolf snorted, as if agreeing with the compliment. Gregory took a few pieces of dried meat from his pocket. "Here, help yourselves." The young wolves first looked at their father, and only after his barely perceptible nod did they cautiously take the treat. "Now that's discipline," Gregory shook his head. "You should be raising children, my friend." Silverback came closer, resting his head on the man's lap. Gregory stroked the thick white fur, running his fingers through the silver stripe along his spine. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes I think we humans should learn from you. Loyalty, justice, the ability to forgive, but not to forget." The wolf looked at him with intelligent yellow eyes, and the old man felt as if his friend understood every word. "How much humanity is there in a human?" Gregory mused, recalling how he once asked himself this question. "Sometimes very little, and sometimes more than we think. It all depends on choice. Every day we choose who to be." Silverback snorted softly, as if concurring with his old friend's philosophy. Then he rose, stretched, and looked towards the forest. It was time to return to the pack. "Go." Gregory nodded. "They need you, and visit often. You're always welcome." The wolf looked at the man once more, then turned and gracefully headed toward the forest. His family, the she-wolf and the young wolves, followed him. Soon the white silhouettes dissolved among the trees. Gregory watched them for a long time. Twilight deepened, but he was not lonely. He knew his friends were near, and that true friendship knew no boundaries between species. And somewhere deep in the wilderness, among the ancient trees and rocks, ran a white wolf with a silver stripe down his spine. He was the leader of a strong pack, and a friend to man. He was Silverback, a living legend of the wild, a symbol of loyalty and devotion, a reminder that sometimes the line between human and beast is not as clear as we think. The first star lit up in the darkening sky. A wolf howl echoed across the wilderness, powerful, confident, full of life. Gregory smiled. Silverback was marking his territory, protecting his home. And that home was also the old ranger's home. "Good night to you too, friend," he whispered, rising from the porch. In the starlight, a silver thread gleamed. A wolf's track stretched from the cabin to the forest, connecting two worlds, two lives, two destinies. A track that would never disappear as long as those who remembered this story lived. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this story? Share your thoughts. Your comments are very valuable to us.